Come. So, guys, here we are. The ninth touchdown of the wealth transfer initiative. So, we're just talking, or better said, I was talking, and Loudon and Tibi was hearing. So, I'm going to shut up my mouth and let Tibi and Loudon just have some share some thoughts to begin to start to open this touchdown. So, my dear folks, feel free to express yourselves and let's go. TB, are you going to put us?
Oh, I was
Oh,
speaking. I
yeah,
was speak. I was
okay.
speaking, but I was muted.
Okay.
So I was saying, nice to see you here, Lauren. We met before, and we spoke about Torika and Chicolab. Yeah, uh, I've been participating in a few of those wealth transfer discussions in the past. It was some of them have been pretty interesting, and it's also interesting what happens after, in email discussions. How did you hear about this, and how do you associate wealth transfer with what you're doing?
Yeah, he just asked how do you hear about this? Well, I invited her, but
Okay.
uh, so I don't know if she has a clue about what you're talking here,
Wealth
but I
transfer, no?
think that we just give.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
yes, yes.
maybe,
So
there's Oh, can you speak, Lauren, or you're muted?
I can speak.
Oh, okay, yes. Um, if not, what does it mean to you when you hear about wealth transfer?
I'm not sure what it means as a concept here. All I know is that every time I'm here, there are fantastic people here. That's all I know.
Okay.
That's why I'm into it.
Because it would be nice to know how you would translate that into your community and your work. Um, yeah, m- maybe Vinicius can introduce the concept. Yeah, we can introduce the concept to you, and I mean everybody has its own concept, and there's many dimensions to wealth transfer. That's what we figured out here through these discussions. Vinicius, you wanna?
okay, let's go. As Chibi just said, uh, yeah, it's a very sticky expression, right? Is sticks with you, and you want to understand better what means wealth transfer, what you're talking about, right? You're transferring what, or this is more like a metamorphosis thing. What is wealth, right? And what we as our species defines as wealth. Well, we have let's say the common sense understanding of wealth, right? It's very economic. It's very related to the type of economies that we still nurture, uh, societies, all societies abroad, and it's still very, in this sense, is very
Marche pas trop fort, marche pas
let's
trop. Wait a sec, wait a sec.
it's very it's very materialistic, right? It's very related to what we extract from the planet, what we transform in products, in what we transform in, well, all the goods, let's say. I don't know if this word is the best word to use. Goods, all the goods that we transform, and in that sense, there is a very, let's say, modern age, industrialistic understanding of what could be called wealth, right? And so this is the common, let's say, understanding of wealth and it's dated, right? It's very dated. It's very old. It doesn't have any future in the sense of what we desire for our futures from now on in our daily our daily our daily let's say daily lives, right? So uh, when we started this just doing what TV just said. We started this trying to touch and understand what the meaning of wealth. And one thing that came up with was this understanding that if we're talking about wealth in a 360-degree sense, of course, we're not talking about money or accumulation of money or any type of resources related as money, right? We're talking about health, right? We're talking about our relationships with all the species in this planet. So we're talking about dealing with things that we actually don't have the time to deal with, dealing with the pressures of the high standards, the high push that what we consider a productive society has to have, right? So uh, that's it. So we're trying to do a move here from this extractive and scarcity mindset for a symbiotic and abundant mindset. So a symbiotic with the nature of this planet and symbiotic mindset. That's the shift that we're seeking here, and not only in a philosophical sense, but in a very practical one. So in a practical, it's to understand that we're not only here to talk. You see, Lauren, we're here to talk and walk and do the walk while we're talking, right? So uh, that
You
would
know, I love that.
yeah. And Lauren is always doing some walk while she's talking in the outskirts of Paris. But I know that it didn't sit so that in that sense, but only in that sense. But it's a more uh, wider one. But that's it. I think I try to contextualize a little bit. But as TB says, everyone has something to put on the table in terms of perspective. What could be considered wealth for the third decade of the 21st century, right? In this midst of this huge planetary civilizational collapse that we're living in, and with all sorts of climate change, not only the planet one, climate change in education, climate change in health, climate change in everywhere that you can look with, that the pandemic just enhances it, makes it more obvious. Still, a lot of people doesn't even have the perception that is so obvious now because they're so ingrained, right, in this old ethos. They have to pay the bills, they have to work, they don't have the time to even make a tiny reflection about what is happening, even if their parents are dying of COVID-19, even if their friends are dying. It's impressive how we create such non-humanistic uh, societies, right? Non-humanistic, let's say, organism, very mechanical, very industrialist, very technological, but totally disconnected from the complexity of this planet. So I think that's it. I don't know if that serves as a context, a broader context, introduction for it, but that's it.
Yeah. Um, and to talk about my experience, I think since we have been talking about wealth transfer here, what happens is that I it helps shape a new attitude, and everywhere you look around, you kind of have this question in the back of your mind: um, is that a new form of wealth? that is emerging and we haven't seen before, or was there before but we haven't considered. um, you know and Also, how else can we do things differently, um, you know um, uh, than the pursuit of, we often do things in the pursuit of wealth, as we understand it in the traditional way, right? So makes you think, can we do the same but shape it in a different way, so that it's not the old image of wealth that drives my actions. So for example, we have this project in Sensorica about building a food processing machine. um, and when you work on a technology, you want to distribute it, right? You want to disseminate it. You want that technology to get into people's hands. But in classical terms, in traditional terms, people think of market distribution, right? So let's make a product. Let's make a product and then sell it and distribute it. And the capitalistic mantra is that by helping people, you get rich. You know what I'm saying? Well, it's a way we have been indoctrinated to think, right? Is that if there is a problem in the world, make a product, help these people, and you'll be rich. And there's nothing wrong with being rich, you know. Um, uh, but what if we take a technology and disseminate it not through market dynamics? You know, is that more helpful for the world? Um, what are the mechanism of dissemination if it's not market distribution? Okay, so what if you don't make a product? What if this device to process food is not a commodity? It's not a product. It's not something that you designed to sell. Okay, but it's something that you designed for people to make, like a do-it-yourself type of thing, right? So what if you design it open source, give the recipe, make sure that you design it in a way that can be built with local materials. You can take into consideration what kind of technology are, for example, in some different parts of the world, in Africa and South America. Do they have access to labs, to shops, to weld metal and to a CNC machine? If they don't, let's redesign these things so that they can actually make it. Okay, so what if we redesign this material object that it is not a product to be sold, okay, for a profit, let's say, um, and we design it for people to make it themselves, or with the help of some resources that are very local, right? And this technology can be disseminated. So here's a device that is a solution to a problem, but it's not a product, and it disseminates in an open source do-it-yourself, okay, way. And then the question is, well, yeah, this is a dream pipe. How are you gonna survive? How are you gonna live? How are you gonna do that? You know, and that's the question. Like, what is that we're generating? We're generating some new wealth. Let's stop thinking about money as wealth, but we're generating some wealth. We have to generate some wealth because people want this thing and they will adopt it. Okay, we're solving a problem, so there is a wealth that is generated. So let's look for it. Okay, and can we, the designers, those people that instigate this movement of dissemination of this new solution, okay, can we actually be rewarded for it? Okay, can we have a portion of that new type of wealth, and in what form we can have it? Because there's nothing wrong about asking to be fed when you work for other people. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, but we're not speaking the same language anymore. Okay, so that's one example of how I take this wealth transfer concept and apply it to my daily activities in Sensorica, and how these talks, can reshape our thinking, to look for things and to build things in a totally different way, because we're not just trapped into this narrow vision of wealth equals money, and anything we do, uh, we have somehow to equate it into money or something that is worth money, like gold or real estate, or these traditional uh, proxies of wealth, right? There's many other things. We also considered ecosystem capacity for regeneration as wealth. Okay, so what if a bunch of people um, um, increase the capacity of regeneration, of the regenerative capacity of an ecosystem, of physical environment? So here we move away from sensorica and economics and go into ecology, right? um, into the environment. That's wealth. That's wealth, increasing the capacity of regeneration. So how these people can be fed by everybody else because they're doing this service to the ecosystem. Yeah.
Very well put. I think that Lauren made this observation in the chat that do you want to comment about it, Lauren?
No, not at this point. I did want to go back a little bit and hey Tiberius, nice to see your face.
Hello. Here's my coffee, Vinny.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
when I thought it was really interesting when Tibi said how would I translate this concept into my community?
Hmm.
We speak English, so it's like it's more like how can I present this mimetically to my community that in ways that they will you say it in such a way that people will understand. And I think that's a really important concept of transcensing, of it's
Hmm.
not just like a literal translation from language to language, but a mimetic kind of transfer. So that's what I wanted to comment on actually.
Yeah, yeah. But
And I just want to say one more
yeah,
thing.
of course, of course.
Oh, so when I was in Brazil, I was making because I met this couple and they were telling me how they met, adorable couple, and the man said, "Well, I made a list of 9 things that I wanted," and so I made my list of what I wanted in my future husband, and one of them I started off, it's like, I kind of want a guy who's like financially stable. So I think I started with like wealthy. And then I was like, but then what happens if we have like a depression and he loses all of his money? I'm like, well, that's no good. And so I really thought about it. I was like, in a time when we have these great upheavals of wealth, now I sound like a gold digger, like how does that translate? So I spent a lot of time on it, and after a while I came up with prosperous, because prosperous is, it's like whatever state the world is in, prosperous signals that you're doing well in terms of health, if that's all we have. So I chose prosperous as my personal definition of wealth, because I
Hmm.
thought it signified kind of like a spiritual side and a health side and um, kind of like like someone who attracts money through this kind of energy instead of.
Yeah, but it's not economically attached to it, right?
Mhm.
Prosperous is a concept in my understanding, my perspective. Is more wide. You can be prosperous in various senses, right? In various contexts, different contexts. So it's more, let's say, it's more rich of it's a more is a word that is more rich in stimulating your imagination to understand what is prosperous. So it's not so anchored. It's not even only anchored in one sense, right? It's anchored in a lot of them. So very good what you come with. But what I want to share here with folks today is this concept that this understanding that I have, this background understanding that we with the pandemic, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we became our species became itself in a stage in a stasis in a stage of climate change, right? And I want to just read a little bit what the three main ones are for me, right? And it could serve as a background for what just we're talking here. So let me just share the image. It's going to be nice. So here we go. Are you guys seeing? Are you guys seeing the? Okay,
I see
okay,
tech.
yeah, yeah, yes. So here we go. Uh, there are, my understanding, there are three unprecedented worldwide climate change happening right now. The first one is this one, the health framework one, the most visible at the moment, where all its rationale is based on corrective health, owned and managed by governments and pension funds, not preventive. Not counting its economy is driven by death and big pharma drugs. This is the first one. The second one, the educational culture one, where 19th century fossilized schooling methodology hasn't been working for decades now. That simply is completely out of touch with the complexity of all sorts of pressing realities and doesn't have in its institutional guts the self critique openness to completely change its own paradigm. This is the second one. And the third, of course, the climate change per se, as this massive Holocene planetary wise phenomenon, daily fueled by hyper consumeristic drivers of a financialized global extractive microeconomy that is not going to change its ethos through nation states' green agreements, have been only diminishing some negative externalities, or even mass blockchain adoption alongside industries. So, in many ways, we're literally dealing with a never once global scale civilizational collapse. And at the same time, in the most insane way, starting a new age of space exploration, which is radically different scenario that of the passage of the last century. So that I think that defines uh, because you see in this paragraph here, I try to summarize it. In other words, dear peers, in my actual understanding, the type of groundwork that is needed for any meaningful wealth transfer is not only to come up with new signals and metrics attached with the regime and the peer-to-peer movements, which is for itself a huge challenge for all kinds of impact investors to make the transition from, let's say, their game A, fiat money expectations to game B, blockchain tokenomic perspectives, but literally to walk the talk with those who have been already critically transitioning in various ways, like Sensorica, for instance, from web environments, Web 2 to Web 3, like Threefold or Holochain, to new forms of reimagining education in this complex network at times, like Utopia, or prototype fresh new regime community economics, like Cambiatos from Costa Rica, precisely to blueprint not a new business model for ESG, environmental social governments, but the very civilizational ethos of the kind of transition that tackles directly at the same time the complex issues of the climate changes with an ecology of DAOs approach, not a conventional startup change the world approach, and and the very broad span of the meaning crisis that individuals and societies at large are feeling, especially since COVID-19 fractured the macroeconomic machinery in a way that we still didn't grasp. I don't know if that better explains, right, uh, what we're doing here, give more texture and context for the conversation that we're already having here. But I think that this type of background makes understand how this type of proposal here, this type of initiative, is very welcoming, right, and very necessary. I would say, very necessary for this transitional times, this profound transitional times that we're living in. So that's it. What you guys react? Any reaction to that? Because TB already know this was shared with the guys that are already in the initiative. You see, Lauren, but it would be nice if you want to react or not react to that.
Hmm. Does it make it more clear for you? And
Yeah, I mean, I would say like to me a better phrasing might be like wealth reimagining.
yeah, that's the first step. It's the first step of reimagining the wealth, and then we can engage in in
Because
um,
wealth transfers, so in English that usually means like taking away from the rich and giving away to someone else. And I
well,
think this is a different
yeah, it's that's interesting that you're mentioning it, because sometimes you can have this cognitive dissonance when you use some terms that are previous that have been previously semantically charged, right? Yeah, I never thought about it. That's interesting. Interesting. But we have an historical example of wealth transfer. Uh, I mean, we have many historical. Every time the economy completely shifts, you have a transfer of wealth,
Mhm.
which means that some old assets, traditional assets, will lose value, and new assets that are created that have never existed before, they increase in value. Okay, so
Mhm.
take for example the transfer from capitalism to from feudalism to capitalism. Okay, the most important asset that people could own, could have at that point, was land, and everything was um, everything revolved around land. Marriages were fixed based on how much land you own. Okay, your social status was directly related to how much land you own. The king was to defend the land, and then steer his economy, which was basically based on agriculture. So I don't know, 90% of the economy was agriculture. Okay, and then capitalism is new means of production, and now you have new types of assets. You have technological assets. You have these motors that you can put on any shitty piece of land that is worth nothing for agriculture, and the value, it's not the land that you put the motor on, is what you produce, what you manufacture. So you have the capital, okay, means of production, as new forms of assets. So it was smart at that time to think, you know what, I'm rich because I have land. Let me sell a bunch of my land and buy some stupid land in a city that is not any good for agriculture, and put a motor on it, and have, and you know what I'm saying. So let me transfer my wealth in land to wealth in capital of used to production, or financial assets, stocks, because now you have these markets that are emerging as capitalism is created, right? The financial institutions and markets, they become, they evolve as as how do you say, capitalism was emerging. Energy assets, like, who would buy I don't know, coal before the industrial revolution? Well, some people to heat their houses, but was very minimally used. But now, having a claim to a land that was rich in energy resources like coal, became a very important thing. Transportation assets, you know i I arrange for ownership of land to trace a railway, and and I put a train on it. So these things were new, and they were new, and they were working together in synergy to form this new economic logic, which was called capitalism. So so if you were in feudal times, were very super wealthy because you own land. Now it makes sense to divest from that kind of asset, and invest in new assets. So wealth transfer is, how do I stay wealthy while the economy is shifting from one side to another. Because if I keep my money, if I keep my wealth in land, uh, I will become poor. You know what I'm saying? And other people that shifted, that invested in these new assets, production, transportation, energy, finance, they're going to become the wealthiest people in the world. And as a matter of fact, Ford became a very wealthy person, and General Motors was at some point the largest company in the world. So this is when this is the apogee of capitalism, let's say, and then things shift, change, and you have the introduction of let's say the internet at some point, right? Another economic shift, creation of new assets, which are digital assets. Okay, so who were the wealthy people after? Well, Bill Gates, because he owned some assets that didn't exist before. Like none of this, software thing and existed before. And then you have the internet that was the computers, right? Now we have the internet, and the wealthiest people are like Google, right? Are the guys that are um, doing something for connectivity, right? So
Mm.
Bill Gates was for computers operating system before the internet. So you have these shifts and new assets that emerge. So in that sense, we think of transfer, not taking from somebody and giving to somebody else. That's how do you call that? Redistribution in Marxist terms, I think. Yeah, um, but it's well, yeah, you can say transfer or redistribution, whatever. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah. So what is the equivalent? What are the new assets that are emerging today? You know, um, we can ask ourselves the question, um, and some of them are not widely recognized, so um, they're not yet a form of wealth, but they will be in the future. Um, and it's like in the 90s when the internet came, was built. Um, you know, these assets that were built on top of the internet, people didn't perceive the value, but they were there in potential, right? So um, almost nobody understood the potential of the internet in the beginning. A lot of major companies, they just totally missed out, and very established businesses, they collapsed, you know, because of this shift, like
Yeah,
blockbuster was.
yeah. Tibi, I agree with you, but already shared with you, in my understanding, what happened in the turning of the centuries with the internet, uh, it was something that was done in the actual ethos of the society as we know it, by a technological driver, right? We always had this technological driver as a species and as communities, as societies, as tribes. You put it the way that you frame it the way that you want. But what we're what we're really living now is in a planetary scale, is a total collapse of this huge machinery, this huge framework and machinery, macroeconomic machinery, hyper consumeristic one that ingrains everything in it, indexes everything in it. We're not shifting, let's say, not shifting from a technological stage to a new technological one where we can't grasp, let's say, what is the asset of this new technological state, let's say, in the singularity technological frame that Ray Kurzweil keeps talking about, right? This epochs, exponential epochs of technological evolution. Well, you see, we're always going to be technological beings, right? I would say that technology, as we know it, in the hardware sense or in the software sense, is the extension of our minds, right? We can sense We can feel, let's say, through technology or through internet, let's say, we can sense anyone, anything around the world now. In this sense, technology is an extension of our hands, of our sensing, right? Technology is an extension of it. Well, technology will always be with us because we are technological beings, right? We are technological beings in our senses. Uh, Due to the prefrontal cortex, right? Due for our prefrontal cortex capabilities, to imagine, always to imagine toolings and tools to deal with reality, right? But what we're talking here about is something, my understanding, much more profound. Uh, you see, we since the modern, what we call modern age, right? The modernity and the post-modernity, for me, is just a nuance. Is not something very rigid where you call this is the modern age and this is the post-modernity. No, I think that this is one thing, one whole thing, the modern age, because it's a very industrialistic, let's say, uh, 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 driver, a very industrialistic mindset, right? Where we enhance, where we detach ourselves from what was the concept of a good living for centuries or for thousands of years as little tribes, little communities, from this huge concept of nation states, right? Mimetic concept of nation states that what made what what shaped the meaning for you, what give the meaning of
Hmm.
being part of one this nation state was the main driver was the economic one, right? Was the
Hmm.
technological and economic one. In a very, let's say, non-relational way, right? In the sense that we are making our relations here right now, interacting and making our relations here right now in a very uh, based on let's say I'm without words today. Forgive me, my friends, but based on a way to be and to stay and to be with others that is very individualistic. It's extremely individualistic. And when you look back, we never been so individualistic. We're always have been very community driven, right? Very tribe driven.
Hmm.
Okay, it's still in us, but the main characteristics of this modern age that we're still in it, but it's in this collapse process, collapse dynamics that we're talking here about, is that everyone is your own world, right? Everyone is your own bubble, your own world, and with your own cryptographic understanding, your own culture, your own language, and it's you're always monologuing, you're always broadcasting. Uh, that, that's it. So you see this type of world that we became, right? Which every human being is its own world. It's individualistic, egotistical own world. Uh, uh, is totally detached from nature. Is totally detached from what we call community. Okay, one can argue that wow, but you see this civilizational, this type of civilization that we become as national states increased with technology, increased the health or the wealth of many people that didn't have this opportunity doing the doing the ancient ages, right? Where we were monarchies, we were feudalistic. We had feudalistic, let's say, lives, right? Very territorial, very regional lives. One could argue that, in some senses, you could give credit to that, but not at the whole one, in the whole sense of it, at least in my perspective. So for me, TB, we're really making a huge shift. Not only a shift, but we're really a huge, uh, profound re-understanding of our beingness in this planet, and that's not everyone that understands that. I might be wrong, right, in my take, but I'm the type of guy that always in conversation with people all over the planet, as Louding is, as you too, TB, and with people that speaks different language, that where the meaning has different. Uh, you see, language is a type of cryptography, right? It's encapsulates culture, so it established this multicultural thing, like one language is one tribe, one for a lot of sub tribes. But the feeling that I have from folks all over the planet is that the way that we still live, uh, it doesn't have any future in our presence, right? So that's why we're in this meaning crisis, this profound meaning crisis that we're living in. That everyone feels it a little bit, not as I feel, as Lauren feel, as you feel, right? Everyone feels a little bit. So for me, it's not something, only something that we didn't realize yet. What's the exit of this new wealth that's coming? It's literally to understand a new ethos, a new ethos of society. What is this new ethos as society that we can become, that we can have a grasp of it, that is nature related, that is life centric, that it's that that vibrates within us as human relations, and I don't know. I'm very, I'm very, I'm not well today to put my thoughts in words, especially in English, but I'm trying to express myself here the best way I can today. There are some days that you can express clearly, but today is not my day. So I don't know if I could reach you folks to say what I'm trying to say here. What I'm trying to say here, that's the movement that we're living is more profound ever happen in the course of our species, right? Of course, if we're living in the Roman Empire, or we're living in the Greeks Empire, or the Greeks city states, right? We could say the same, right? Because our worldview was the city, or worldview was the Roman Empire. Wow, so the whole world is the Roman Empire, right? Could say the same, but I think that in the scale, the, 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 the quantity of individuals of our species never been so huge, and in the scales of all these nation states being really being still being the framing of the understanding of our beingness in this planet, for me is totally having doesn't have any sense at all, because it's out of touch with everything. Forgive me, I have to put this out, but I put it in a very poor way. I realize it because what is in my head here, I didn't translate in the language, and that's Louding what we're talking about transcending. So let's go.
Are you gonna say something, Lauren, or no? Yeah. I'm trying to see how we could connect this with Chicolab. From the little I know, um, so from what I understand, you you are about social intelligence, right? That's the focus of Chicolab. And yes, there's many levels. There's many levels to this. I tend to have a more like economical, technological view on things, Vinicius, and maybe one day we can dig a little further into the way you see it. I am very pragmatic in my approach to things, meaning, if there is something that we think about, we must also think about what's the use and how we can put it to work in some way, and um, that's why I think in terms of the economic aspect and technological aspect. But it would be nice one day to dive a little deeper into how you see it. Yes, Lauren, you can speak now, or
Yeah, we're going to have a whole cast experience about ethos, right, and
yeah,
ethics. Would it
yeah,
be
for sure. Oh, yeah, this will be the time to touch. Yeah,
yeah, totally.
mm, ethos. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay, this may seem kind of unrelated, but I think a question that arises in my mind is how do you create memes around this? What is the process for meme creation? Because that's really what it is, I think. And at Kiko Lab, we really we've kind of developed a process for meme creation and story creation, kind of a scalable process. So that may have something to do with it because I think that's necessary in order to
Mm-hmm.
ideate and then create actual stories from that ideation and turn them into um, videos and more compelling memes, I think. So I think there's always like a kind of this advertising element that we're missing. Um,
To communicate these concepts.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, but do you see a way to implement some of these in? I was in a call one day with your group, and the topic was a sustainable economic model, and people were struggling with a sort of a business model. Um, People are trying to define what is that the group creates and how that can be turned into some revenue to make to make people within the group more, be able to sustain themselves, sustain their activities. Um, so can you relate to that in terms of wealth transfer, or where are you with that?
I would love
Uh,
to be farther along, but I still don't feel like we really have the concepts down of how these can be, how we can transition to new models. I'm just still not understanding it. Um, yeah, so I'm coming up a
mhm.
little short.
So how far are you with that now? And is anything concrete? Sorry.
Uh, is what can create.
Are these thoughts more concrete of the economic model of the group, the organization, or have you advanced a little bit the concept?
Well, in one sense, we've advanced. I think we have perhaps discovered a way to at least kind of bring in stakeholders for this, the weight of the ideation to do more, to be able to do that. That's kind of the problem. Um, so we've been able to attract some really, smart, imaginative people. But in order to go from, just talking to something more than that, it's really like a ton of work in the idea processing. So you can talk, but then you need to actually put it into a report, a video. It needs to go someplace.
Hmm.
So that's a lot of weight. And so what we've been thinking is to bring in stakeholders, and the stakeholders can kind of take over the group to ideate on a certain topic. If they take the responsibility of the heavy processing and kind of use our methods, so at least we can um, cover our kind of expenses in order to do that. Even if they don't pay an enormous amount for the privilege, at least it's more self-sustaining. So that's not the most exciting news ever, but it is at least I think it will allow us to be able to expand the ideation process and do it in um, a larger way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You see, Lauren, uh, what you guys are sorting out as a way to sustain it, not only to walk to talk, but to walk, right? And make this more grounded, let's say, more uh, is the way that any one of us here actually comes up with, because it's already established, it's already institutionalized, right? In that sense, uh, imagine that we're talking here in this initiative with guys that consider themselves impact investors, right? And what are they want to do? They want to uh, uh, separate a fraction of what we called idle wealth, right? What in terms of, let's say, money, specifically dollar, euro, real, and just put this in a type of shared fund, right? Shared fund for do this experimentation for this emerging or decentralized organizations that has in its core the regen and the peer-to-peer movements. So it's not a investment, a traditional and conventional investment. It's not something that, but uh, different. Like let's say that Sensorica is not at this point, but it will be, and TB can, of course, talk a little better, a little more about this. But let's take Utopia. Utopia already has a token called Oz token, Ooze token, Ooze token. It relates to reframe what we call education for the third decade of the 20th century, but in a very micro learning, peer to peer way. Micro learning, peer to peer way, right? So this is something that has a lot of future in our presence, because it's something, because when you issue as tokens, it means that you're learning skills to deal with the climate changes that we're living in. That means that you're learning and ingraining in your life new habits. So this is a new type of wealth, right? This is a new type of wealth. So the currency of the Oz token uh, uh, recognizes that every time that you, let's say, you not only consume a content about zero waste, let's say, but you actually practice it. You don't generate waste, right? You diminish your generation of waste. This is the type of impact that these guys are looking at. So when they put this money, this idle wealth money, let's say, in this shared fund, right? Uh, this money is sitting there to be access for all this ecology of organized, decentralized organizations, right? That is transforming this fiat money, dollar, euro, in Oz tokens or any other type of tokens related to any new types of generation of wealth. So that's why we're calling wealth transfer, right? Even because you have the opportunity. let's say, to drain this old fiat currency related to extractive and scarcity mindset, and transform it and transfer it to a meaningful, abundant mindset, microeconomy, tokenized microeconomy in a planetary wise way. I don't know if I, once more, I was clear what I just said, but that's not the whole intention, right, TB? This is one of it. So uh, it would be nice to have Kikolab as one of these decentralized peer-to-peer, right, organizations in it. It would be nice, Laurin, not only you, but everyone in the Kiko Lab be accessing this type of shared fund, right? And it would be nice if Kiko Lab would have its own token, right? It would be nice because the type of work that you guys are doing, it's in terms of time and space, in terms of time and space, it's futuristic, but it's doing in its present day, right? It's dealing with the pains of the past. It's really with the pains and the inertia and the pains of the past that still exists in the present of our lives. So uh, to come up with new ways of beingness, of being together, to re-understand the very generation of wealth in these things that are very important, very relevant with what we're living now. Let's say education, health, right, and all sorts of things. I don't know if once more I was clear, but I try to share with you some of the exploration that we're already doing, and you are invited. You and the folks over Kiko Lab are invited to come to join with. Would you like Tibi to add something? I think the louding is okay.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. That's good to be practical too. And you know, before we go to the big ideals, we have to put one foot in front of the other and start thinking about how do we live today while we build what we want to build for the future, right? So it's that kind of practicality that's it's interesting and it's also important for attracting people to the idea, right? Um, because if we continue to brainstorm in the abstract about wealth transfer, um, if we don't translate that into what it could mean today for some people, you know, I think we will not be effective to spread these ideas, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, I totally agree with your approach here to say, you know, Kikolab could actually benefit from a relationship with these impact investors that are starting to see what we see. You know, in a sense, this is a sort of um, a group where we coordinate our worldviews and ideas, and then by coordinating, we align our models and actions so we become more compatible. So yes, what's his name again? With the impact investing, what's his
Walter,
name?
Walter,
Walter.
Walter.
Yes. So then Walter understands what is that Sensorica is doing in the world, what is that Kikolab is doing in the world, and how they can shift their business model, let's say, for impact investment to cater to this kind of new communities. So this is something very practical that could emerge from this group, right? And then inviting others to
Yeah,
dock in
but
it's a painful process to to coordinate our brains and trying to understand the other. You know, we're all in our silos and try to solve our little problems in our little corner. Um, but if there is a world shift, that requires coordination. that requires coordination, and and this is yet another group. This is yet another group that looks at this shift from a different perspective, wealth, right? And allows different groups and organizations to kind of realign themselves on this dimension and form new alliances. And by every time we form a new alliance in any one of these dimensions, we increase our capacity, we increase our rate of success, right? Because we kind of we are shaping this new thing that is emerging. Um, so it's part of the change process. It's part of the transformation process. It is a painful process, and sometimes we need to, you know, work hard to understand the other people's point of view and models. But if there is no interoperability, if there is no synergy, the thing doesn't work. you know. Mhm.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, in a conversation with Sam Rose and TV, um, we're talking about the concept of an open lab and kind of changing the metaphor of a lab with four walls. And we've continued to ideate on that. And it's turned into this mural board. And yeah, so I think that's promising. So the idea is to start connecting the different commons based organizations and actually, because we're all like adopting these innovations, but Sensorica has these cool innovations that, other people don't use. So we just have our own few. But if we started to adopt each other's at a higher
Yeah.
rate and it started to move between us, then we could just all, it'd be amazing. And I also just wanted to say that, I've been doing research for years on innovation and how you actually, uh, with the end in mind of having a fund that be like a true innovation fund where you actually build things according to the science of innovation and not just like buzzwords about how it's done, but how you actually produce innovation. And because there are different elements to that that no one invests in, and I don't understand why. Like for example, this like the interoperability, the ability to form partnerships and get out of these partnerships. It's every time you want to like have a partnership or do business or form an alliance, there's like tons of red tape and you're lost in the weeds of
Yeah.
an organization and trying to negotiate among even just two people. It's so hard. And
Hmm.
it's just I'm not sure why the concept isn't catching on. I don't think we're pushing commons based innovation hard enough as a real investable thing, um, that's even more valid than corporate innovation, because corporate
Yeah.
innovation is not really a thing. They cannot, like a corporation can't really handle deep innovation, because with deep innovation, something as deep as like GPS or wireless transmitter, something like that, it's really difficult to invest in for a company, because a company has this infrastructure, and with deep innovation you actually don't know where the actual business will be at the end. So a state can actually invest in it, like the US Department of Defense.
Yeah.
But companies, they don't, they can do small innovations like the iPhone, but everything that actually makes the iPhone cool, like the GPS and the internet and stuff like that, that was all developed by the state. So I think that we have to spread the story of the commons can be a new real form of innovation to invest in, and
Hmm.
how like create kind of the new mother of all demos, and actually like produce a vision of what we could do together if there was investment, like how cool it could be. Here's our vision.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting thought about. Hmm.
I would like to share with you guys an experiment that is already running here in Brazil in Portuguese, Brazilian language, Laurie. And we're now making the move to make it transparent in a platform called Gitcoin for
I
people.
know Gitcoin. I have Gitcoin.
Yeah, Gitcoin. Yeah, Gitcoin.
You know,
Yeah, yeah. Because it's just it's an experiment too, like a lab, to just to see if guys over Gitcoin get it, get the gist of it, get the understanding of it, because it's a very crypto-driven community where we have a lot of devs, right? We have a lot of devs, and with this decentralized, this DeFi thing, decentralized finance and things like that. Well, so the experiment that we're doing is called Tau DAO. Tau as the Tao that we know, right? The Tao, the way, the ways, or the way or the ways that you journey your life, right? So it's called Tao DAO. The guys that disposal their idle wealth, there are three guys that disposal their one of them is with us. Tibi is Danilo King,
Yeah.
and the other one, the others are they don't see themselves as impact investors, but they have some idle wealth, so they share this idle wealth for this shared fund, right? And what is Taudao about? Taudao is about to produce in a decentralized way regenerative content. Okay, regenerative content is to produce regenerative content, but to produce in a regenerative way, not in a productive and productivity way. To 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 have, and it's very inclusive because is you don't have to be a DJ or a VJ. You don't have to be a specific a guy from the market of communication or market to be in Taodao. You can be anyone. Can be a teenager. Can be someone in its 70s. It can be anyone. So actually, we have 25 people around Brazil that are actively doing things in Taudao. And they are not being paid to do it. They're not being paid to do it. They do what we call conscious access. Conscious access. Because as they understand the proposal, Taudao is not an organization, right? Like I think Kicolab isn't so. It's not a conventional organization, right? It's more like an organism, like Sensorica is too, in various senses. So they access this shared fund, and in a very let's say in a very free way. It doesn't have rules for it. Once more, it doesn't have rules. You don't have any type of legislation or rules or policy to say how you access it. No, you just make your move. You access. You made a conscious access to the fund, right? The share fund, and people put all sorts of quantities of reals that they want to access because of course they have to pay bills and things like that. But in order to make that, they have to receive. They see they if you get involved with Taodao, uh, TB, this is very interesting. You receive Tau tokens,
Hmm.
right? Tau tokens is not something that is being issued by an algorithm that is running on a blockchain, right? Tau tokens is something that is empathically driven, uh, and empathically driven in the sense that we have confidence that you, TB, that you, Lauren, as you get involved with Taodao, and you understand the circumstances to be involved with Taodao, to co-create, you're a co-creator of Taodao. So you, as you get involved, you receive Tau tokens, right? You just receive it. And in a minimal amount of Tau tokens, plus what you're doing, you're materializing, what you're making of content, you can do your conscious access, right? And this is thriving. Folks here are crazy about it, right? And I just put this on the Gitcoin platform, and already had $11 of grant running. So here we go. Uh, I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. Are you guys seeing?
Yeah.
So here, what if we co-created the ways which we connect, generate, and distribute wealth and knowledge? Tao Dao has two main goals: the co-creation of constructed contents while being a pillar for making lives alive. We're actually 25 proactive co-creators of Tao Dao ecosystems from all over Brazil. Okay, this is in Brazilian Portuguese language. Okay, I put it in English. So, what is the concept? What we call portals are the YouTube channels from where this idle wealth came, right? What we call orbitals are new content producers that comes. And every time that you want to produce some content, you need to do a process that we call people backing. It's interactive. It's not a vote process. It's an interactive process, a dynamics, where people comes to a Zoom, right? And the ones that are proposing their content to be produced, they pitch to everyone, and in the end, the people says, "Well, I'm in. I support and I active. I want to be part of this. I want to make this content." So we call this hollow. Hollow, that is a Greek word for a part of the whole and a whole of the part, right? So we established this hollow. So in this sense, Tao Dao is not an organization. It's an interactive global organism open to anyone that vibrates in the same peer-to-peer and regime frequency, literally co-creating and commons space to host and produce in a decentralized manner content about all sorts of initiatives, projects, and endeavors that are reframing the very conception of wealth and weaving in between numerous social worlds regenerative patterns of livelihood for everyone. And this is the I showed today, yesterday, Chibi. This is one of the content that was produced for the OCAST experience. Chibi saw yesterday, right? And it's very nice.
I think you didn't share your sound, Vinicius.
Yeah, this is without sound. I have to put the sound one. I'm going to put the one that has sound. This is the wait a minute, just a sec. Uh, but I think that you guys got it. So it's not that
Hmm.
we're only talking, we're walking, we're doing it. So the invitation, Lauren, is to Kiko Lab do the same, right? We already have people that are really excited to do this, and the Taudao is just, let's say, uh, a prototype. Let's say it's just prototyping it, right? And we get rid of all these policies, regulations, and because you see, we give a shit about fiat currencies, right? We give a shit about it because fiat currency doesn't have any value for any type of future for your kids, my kids, or anyone. So people just have the understanding. Okay, let's just put this resource here in this share fund, and let's have fun with it. And let's understand what type of social global experimentation are what we can come up with, what is going to turn out to be, right?
Hmm. Interesting. I'll experiment with it.
Please, please.
Yes.
I have the here I have Lauren, the one with the sound, okay, for you guys to hear.
So the contributors in Taodao created this video, right?
Yeah,
Are there many people that worked on it, or just one individual?
Uh, as I said, there are 25 actually very active, and another 10 or 12 not so active, and about eight in total, around 35 people. 35 people that are already doing this.
Because I tried to develop the app. No, that was another app. I think that was the meditation app. Um, yeah, I'll try to find them. I'll try to. I'll ping Danielu for that. Well, yeah, I need to move on. I need to go to some sensorica tasks that I have to do for today. And oh, you have the video?
Yeah, yeah. Here you go. So,
Very nice. Bravo.
yeah, what is nice about this? This is Taudal Discord, guys.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
you see, this is Taudal Discord. It's this is in Brazilian Portuguese language, all of it. And as I said, there are about now 66 people here, but actively about 25 to 35 people. So it's already happening, and it's it's huge. It's huge because it's minuscule. It's very tiny, let's say, in a very huge way of saying, but it's huge because it, no one is being paid to do this, right? And people is just accessing when they need to access, and they're having joy to do this. So
Yeah.
very interesting. That's it, guys. Lauren, please feel invited to have your own OCAST experience. If you like, we could talk more about it to understand. What you just said, this intro, is related to to this experiment too, the OCAST, decentralized way to doing podcasts. And Tibi, my friend, let's talk a little bit more about the Taudao if you want. Even you, Lauren, if we can come up with some, let's say, shared funds for Sensorica and for Kikolab, and make this happen for you guys too. You see, because the thing is, Taudao is doing here is that other guys are being very inspired, and they are doing the same movement. So, and they want to connect their share funds with Taudao's share funds. So, uh,
Oh, great.
in a very ecological way, let's say, right? Mycelium network way. Let's say.
That
Let's put it that
sounds
way.
great.
Yeah. So let's go. Bye bye,
Bye.
guys.
Io
Okay.
gracias, Vinicius. Obrigada.
Imagine
Ciao.
that.
Bye.
Bye, my friends.